Welcome to Chronic Curiosity, where real people have real discussions, unscripted and raw, about anything to everything. If you enjoy the show, we ask that you follow, subscribe to the channels, all those things. Also, if you would like to support the show monetarily, you can do so by going to the website chronic-curiosity.com. At the bottom of the page, you can donate in dollars or Bitcoin, or you can go to the shop and purchase some curious merchandise that just happens to be fantastically comfortable. Also, if you'd like to connect with the show, please feel free to shoot us an email, comment on whatever platform you're using, or you can join the forum that is also at chronic-curiosity.com. Interact, ask questions. Let's have some fun. And here we go.
All the time.
Oh, jeez.
You could do that.
Maybe.
What were you saying about not hearing anything ridiculous?
Yeah, no ridiculousness. Are we good? We're good.
Mhm.
Well, we have a person that is familiar with finance industry with us today.
Yes.
We'll leave it at that. So obviously we've talked a lot, or not a lot over the years, but we haven't really discussed this topic in general. And there seems to be a lot of things going on these days.
Oh my gosh, yes. Where do we start?
yeah, we don't have to go over all the things that are going on these days. But obviously, I really wanted to discuss some financial-esque type things with you. And we discussed the episode I put out a while ago, the what is money.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no idea about finances. I talk about them.
A lot of people don't.
Yeah, we don't. We've talked about Bitcoin and stuff on the show, and we, like I said, we can get there if you want to. If I want to educate the finance person on something,
Yes.
But I feel like a lot of people don't know anything about finances, and they just they go to work, you make your money, and as long as, well, in this area, as long as the person has, their $18 to buy their 30-pack of Busch Light, they're solid for the week.
Yep.
And it's paycheck to paycheck. It's, in particularly in the last couple of years, we've realized that 70% of the nation's wealth is owned by the top 1% or something like that. And that disparity has just continued to grow. And the middle class is essentially, it almost seems like it's kind of being, phased out.
Yep.
Whether it be taxes or, how they handle their finances or corporational corruption, whatever it might be.
Well, and that's why 57% of people feel like they're ready for retiring. It's like 57%. I mean, you would think that would be a lot higher. And we have a lot of people retiring constantly, but only 57% think they actually can, but they still do. You have to make sure you're ready. I mean, unless you want to be a Walmart greeter, which is nothing wrong with that, but know what you know. And I think that's where I think it starts in the school systems is need to start. How do you budget a checkbook? This is what a finance is. And when I was in high school, that's what we did. But now they're not even teaching that. I don't even think they're teaching home ec anymore. But that's where that downfall is nobody knows anything. But you're exactly right. They're just making paycheck to paycheck. And hopefully they can retire. And then that magical age of 65, okay, I'm going to retire because I get my Social Security. Social Security is supposed to phase out by 2033. Or 70% of the income is supposed to be gone by 2033. So it's like, yeah, but do you really want to rely on that? Or when you're 70 years old, okay, well, I got to go back to work.
Yeah, at 70. I'll be lucky if I live that long, honestly. So let's start out with that. What do you think is one of the biggest, or maybe there's probably a couple, I would imagine, that the average person, we're just going to use quote, whatever that means. The average person, when they look at the world of finance and money, that they just maybe aren't necessarily seeing through the right lens, or they don't understand properly that to really help them out, or what is it that they're missing, like the average person?
I think what the average person is missing is knowing what money you're coming in, what you're spending it on, and what that bottom dollar is. Are you on a deficit or do you have a surplus? And it's so super easy because all you have to do is look at your pay stub for that week or that month, write down what the annual income is, and then Write down what your budget is, or not even a budget. Write down what your expenses are. If you go to Starbucks, okay, you're spending $5 that day. Okay, you got Taco Bell. Okay, that's $10. All right, you've got your electricity. Okay, that's $50 a month. If you write all that down and subtract it from your income, you will easily know what your net value is at the end of the day and how much you're saving or losing. And if you can't live within those means, then you need to look at what you wrote down. Maybe you don't go to Starbucks every week. Maybe you go once a week. Maybe you have to look at, I know, God forbid. Or if maybe, you do something with your electricity bill, or, hey, do you really need the newest iPhone? That you can start to look to see what you can do better from an expense standpoint. And I think a lot of people don't. They've got their Netflix, they've got their Spotify, they're spending money at Starbucks every single week. And then they're like, oh, okay, I've got $50 left over by the end of the month. I'm still okay. It's like, for me, I don't like the unknown. I have to know what's going on and where my money is. But if people just more or less just would sit down and take a pen and paper and write down every single thing that they spend on, you'll know easily what you're spending money on and what your outcome is. And I don't think a lot of people are doing that. And I think that's why people are getting so caught up on how much debt they have and having debt, and then not being sure about retiring because they simply don't know what they're spending.
So it's just an entirely like behavioral thing that people just don't know.
It
That's just-
absolutely is. So it's funny. So I was reading an article that we put out, gosh, I think it was a week or two ago, and they were talking about behavioral finance and how some of it is a generational thing. So if your parents didn't spend or teach you to spend and they lived paycheck to paycheck, most likely that's going to continue on to the generation, to the next generation, until you say, okay, I need to do something different. I need to find out what I'm making, what I'm spending, and what the outcome is. Because really, at the bottom line, whether you're making $36,000 a year or $136,000 a year, those people are usually in the same boat. They still don't know what they're spending and what they're saving. So it doesn't matter what your salary is, because I heard that a lot. It's like, well, if I made more money, I'd be able to save more. You tend to make, when you
spend
make
more.
more, you spend
Adjusted
more.
the income,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. But it is a behavioral thing. It is very much, okay, in our society, we like to spend money because it makes us feel good. It gets those endorphins going of, oh, okay, I bought my Starbucks today. I'm going to drink my Starbucks. Oh, I bought this new shirt today. So it's very much behavioral. And if we tie that into, from a savings standpoint, okay, we're going to put some money away, still spend some money because we like to spend money, but focus more on savings. It's an easy process that can be learned, and if someone's willing to teach you how to do it, if you need taught.
So I guess I was hoping there would be some like, well, this is actually the most thing that people like get hung up on, not just that they don't keep track of their own money, but it's not surprising really.
Yeah.
How many times have we talked about people, in like diet and exercise where they're like, oh, I've been doing this workout. I have a clean diet. I just can't lose weight. Well, have you tracked exactly how many calories every single thing you eat? Well, no. And then they do it. They're like, oh, well, I thought I was only eating 2,000 calories, but turns out I'm eating 3,500 calories.
Exactly.
So it turns out I'm spending a bunch of more money than I thought I was.
Well, and the other thing too is even those that are like, hey, I've got a 401k at work. Yeah, I'm putting money into my 401k. They're so careful with how much they're putting into their 401k because they think they need that money now for spending.
Right.
But if you're putting 5% of your income into a 401k at work or whatever your work plan is, you're not going to miss it. You can still spend what you're spending. You just, out of sight, out of mind. You're not even going to think about that. And, our parents were really good with saving money and having retirement. And, back then they had pensions. Now pensions aren't even anymore. But now with our generation, even though generation before us a little bit, we're so scared of putting money into a retirement plan because we're like, well, we need that money now. We've got debt to pay. We've got this, that, and the other. And it's like, if you just put some money aside and not be fearful, you're going to have a good nest egg for retirement and still spend and still pay down your debt and things like that.
But we have means to live outside of.
Well, exactly. that is true. That is true. But I don't know where that scaredness or that fear has come from with not wanting to save money, thinking that, okay, well, I've got to use it towards my debt. I got to use it towards this. I really don't know where that came from, but that's what a lot of people are doing is they're not saving for their retirement because they think they need the money now.
Do you think there's any fear of like them putting money into something that's an investment that they think either isn't going to mature or something's going to happen like back in 2008, 2009?
I think since 2008, I think that does have a correlation to why people aren't saving like they should, because they're like, well, 2008, the market went down 44%.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose that money. But a lot of people that they forget about is we recovered within 18 months.
Yeah.
So if you had pulled out the worst in 2008, you would have not made your money back. But if you would have just stayed the course, just let it ride, you would have been, I think it was almost double what your money would have been if you just let it go.
Yeah, and now you'd be living high on the
I
hog.
was say I would have been
Correct.
investing like crazy if I could
Well,
have been, but
Yeah.
And something that I was looking at when the pandemic started last year, March of 2020, if you put $1,000 in,
Ooh.
what do you think it would be right now?
A lot. Depending on what you put it into, but yeah,
The average right now is 2,500. So you would have
Yeah.
doubled your money
that's what I did, Tony. That's when I started investing.
in the pandemic. So
Yeah.
yeah, investing can be scary, but what we have seen, and I mean, the market's been around since 1896. So it's been around a very, very long time. And what a lot of people don't realize is when they're like, oh my gosh, the Dow's down, 42 points or 400 points. That's 30 companies.
Right.
Most people don't realize that. That's only 30 companies that the Dow is watching. The S&P 500 is watching right around, it's actually 505. It's where that's called the S&P 500, but it's 505 companies that they're
History.
watching.
So I really want to get into that.
Yeah.
But first, I want to ask you, were you going to say something? It looked like you were going to ask a question.
No, well, I thought I was going to ask kind of this. Tony made it a lot smarter, but
He does. He has a tendency to do that.
yeah, because I'm like, what happened in 2008? I don't know.
Well, we'll get to that too, because that ties
But,
to my Bitcoin conversation.
For me, it's kind of like, well, am I really going to be around for retirement? Because I kind of want to live life now. But I really want to make sure I am comfortable when I do retire. So I'm only going to put a little bit there because what are the chances I'm still going to be around then? So like, it sounds ridiculous, but I can't be the only one who thinks that, like, gotta live now because what if I, like.
So I'm glad you brought that up because I have this conversation a lot of times because that's a lot of people say, well, I don't know how long I'm going to live.
Mm-hmm.
I want to enjoy life now. And the beautiful thing is you can, because yes, there's inflation. Yes, there's cost of living adjustments that we have to make, we're, aware of when we go up and we get older and things like that with healthcare and things like that. But you can live now. A lot of people think, I heard somebody say, well, you need $2.5 million when you retire. Where does that money come from? Like, where does that value come
But
from?
for what?
Right,
Also.
and for what? Well, it's an individual thing of what you want to do when you retire and how much you need to do that. So if you want to, live in a camper like we want to do, we don't need a lot of money to live in a camper. We're not going to have any electric bills. We're not going to have any water bills. Groceries, yeah, it's always going to be around. But in hindsight, we won't need a lot of money, whatever that dollar amount equals out to. So it's an individual thing of how much you want to use and what you're going to want to do in retirement. If you want $2.5 million and have $1 million of it in a home, okay, great. But otherwise, it's an individual thing that I think people get too scared of because people have told them, hey, you need this amount of money for retirement, and it's a personalized thing that you have to figure out on your own.
I don't know. I feel like you guys might need $2.5 million. I feel like Chad's gonna want a pretty pimped out camper.
It depends.
It's gonna be like the lug special edition type
Yeah.
R.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Well, and also at the same time, like we can get into this too a little bit. But what's $2.5 million? What does that even mean right now? Because if you are retiring in 10 years, okay, maybe $2.5 million is some kind of benchmark that can kind of be close. But man, we've seen the past 10, 20, 30, 50 years. If you don't retire for another 40 years,
And inflation stays 5.3%.
right?
Oh my
So like you might
gosh.
need 5 million or
Or
10
10
million,
million,
or
yeah.
you might not. You might need one.
Right.
I don't know. You might need rubles. I have no idea what you're going to
Yeah.
need in 40 years. But so kind of going back to the basics a little before we get into the crazy stuff.
Yep.
What do you think that is the switch that most people get flipped to understand, hey, I need to understand my finances better to reach and what makes people, reach out to, a financial advisor or, go down that path of trying to learn what it is that they want to learn for their future. Like, what do you think it is for most people that go from, hey, I'm spending a bunch of money on my credit cards. I live paycheck to paycheck, and I don't know my finances at all, and I don't know why I'm broke, and I can't afford anything, but I'm still, whatever it might be, to, hey, I need to get my finances in order, and then reach out to a financial advisor, or they start like going down that road of, hey, I need to figure this out. What do you think it is that?
Usually it's a life event. So it's either you're starting a family, or you have lost a loved one, or you're getting closer to a retirement. Those are usually the three that I see that people are like, hey, I need to figure out where I'm at and what I need to do to get me from where I'm at to where I want to be. Starting a family is a huge one because, that obviously causes, you've got another additional life that you have to care for. So your expenses are going to go up. And a lot of people struggle with, well, how can I handle this new being that I'm now in charge of, to also paying off paying off my debt, to also making sure I'm going to be able to retire. Obviously a loved one. I have a lot of widows. And I have a lot of young widows. They never thought their husband was going to pass away at 55. And now they, what they thought their life was going to be like is now they've got half the income that they were used to. They're still working. And then, you've got the other where, hey, I'm going to retire in 10 years. I have no idea what I'm going to look like when I'm in 10 years, what my finances are going to look like. So I think those are the three. Oh my gosh, I've got to sit down and do something.
Oof, those are three things that, I get the family one. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And the, losing a loved one that is, part of that, obviously not discounting what that event in your life does to you, but also, all right, now I have to figure out how I'm going to pay for this, or how I'm going to pay. Like, you have this house that, holy shit, how are we going to pay? What am I going to do with this house? Like, all those things. But the retirement one is, in a weird way, almost scarier, because you realize, like, people come to like 10 years before you're about to retire, and it's like, hey, I'm not going to work anymore, and I don't know if I can do this. Like, what? You didn't think about this before? Like,
oh yeah.
I understand the people that, hey, there's an event here that I need to, all right, now I need to plan for this. So what would be your advice to, how do you wake those people up before those three things? One of those three things happen.
Yeah. So, the best thing I can say is, if you feel like you need to sit down, just sit down. It doesn't even matter if you want to invest. Just sit down and say, hey, I need to see what my financial picture looks like, or do it yourself. See what your debts are, see what your annual income is, see what your 401k looks like. You can run the numbers yourself, but I would say, just stop for a second, figure out what you are doing with your life and what you want to do, see where your finances are, and then go for, if you want to see a financial advisor, great. Most of us, we will sit down for free with most people. Now, there's some people that will charge you $300 an hour. Don't go to them. Just don't. It's not worth it. But I think that's a lot of people, is they think that they have to invest when they go meet with a financial advisor. And that's not the case. You can actually go and see what your financial picture looks like, so you know where you're at. And then if you have money to invest at that point, great. But if you don't need an actual financial advisor to help you with your investments for another 5, 10, 15 years, fine, but at least you know where you're at. So don't be fearful to sit down with somebody, even as a financial coach. I know you and I've talked about being a financial coach before. There's financial coaches that
Her,
will do this.
not me. Clarify.
Well, you're the physical coach.
She's the physical, yes.
Yeah.
I just think the word
Hey,
coach
that
sounds
might
a
be
lot
business.
less intimidating.
I was gonna say, that might be a business thing for the physical and the finance.
What else do you need?
F squared.
You're going to look good naked and you're going to have lots of money.
There you go.
Win-win.
But don't be fearful to go sit down and talk with somebody. I read something where people are more willing to go to the dentist than their financial advisor, because they're so scared for whatever reason to look at their finances. And I think it's because a lot of people don't, believe it or not, it's true.
It's probably,
I do. I believe
it's
that.
probably because they know how terrible it is,
Yeah.
but they just try to ignore it. Like,
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that would be my advice, is start early. Even if you don't have money to invest, it's not about investing. It's, hey, let's see what your financial picture looks like, so you can prepare. If you have to put more money away for your retirement, now you know. If you want to pay down your house in 10 years, now you know what you need to do to get there.
Yeah.
If you want to start a college fund for your kids, hey, this is what the price of college is going to be when they're 18. Just knowing what you know so you can plan for it.
When they do invest, you roll out like a super sweet prestige worldwide video with a boat.
Exactly.
So are you going to invest? Well,
Exactly.
Well, I think that's a big piece of it, at least for me and personally, that I've, because I've mentioned a handful of times that, I didn't have a whole lot of money growing up. So like I never had to worry about what to do with my money because I didn't have anything to do, like, because I didn't have any.
Right.
But like when you realize that like there's so many people that are stuck in this loop of that paycheck to paycheck, like if you have a job and you're stuck in the paycheck to paycheck, that means you can survive on what you're making.
Exactly.
So where are the corners that you can cut to not just survive, but to better yourself down the road? And this is just a personal note for me, that when I realized that, even if you have a somewhat low paying job and you're surviving paycheck to paycheck, and you can look at it and go, okay, where are the corners I can cut? And then, maybe instead of going to Starbucks and spending $6 for a coffee, I can go to Dunkin' Donuts and spend $2 for a coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And you take that extra $4 and you put it somewhere. And the investment word it's tricky because most people look at investments, they think the stock market and all these different things, which you can, mean that it's complicated, but to learn, I think the important part is to learn the basics first. Investing that extra $4 might be something where it's, I'm terrible. I can't think of an example right now, but something where that $4 can eventually make you more money. And I think that's one of the biggest disconnects from a quote unquote normal person to these uber rich, people in banking and investment. Like, you realize there's the richest people, particularly in our nation, make money from moving money around.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's all they do. They just move money around.
Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
That's
like
exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, that's
and he does it slow too.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's all they do.
Like, boom, you're just going to get rich overnight.
He's not your day trader. He
Nope.
holds stuff for the long term, and then he's like, okay, I'm going to see an opportunity to dump it. I'm going to dump it and buy something else.
Which is hilarious to hear his exchange with Elon Musk.
Right.
Yeah.
There's obviously people like Elon Musk and the Jeff Bezos of the world that like provide a product and then, leverage that and do additional things with it. But there's so many tricks that when I realized like how these uber rich people operate, it's completely different than a normal person.
Correct.
Whereas they take every opportunity they have to turn what little money they had into more money. And then they take that money and they go, okay, how can I turn this money into more money? And as long as you have the understanding of, okay, this is what I need to live, you don't have to, be uber rich and be dirt poor and wear the same pair of jeans for 40 years to like be comfortable. You can still, like you talked about, spend a little bit of that money, but you have to get to the point where you're making a little bit of money and you're investing and leveraging that money that you have to be able to create yourself a little more space.
But I think that's the hard part with our society, because it's all about keeping up with the Joneses. It's, I've had this phone for 3 years now, and I'm like, oh, I could get the new iPhone. Why? Why do I need to spend another $2,000 on a phone that this one works just fine?
Right.
And I think that's just in our society. It's the next greatest and best thing to buy. I'm going to buy the next greatest and best thing to buy, versus just looking and saying, okay, do I really need that? What's wrong with this phone that I have? Do I have to go out and spend another $2,000? Do I have to go to Starbucks versus Dunkin' Donuts? Well, my best friend goes to Starbucks. I want to go to Starbucks. Well, do I have to buy a new Type R? Well, my Civic's right here is just fine. So and you can buy those things.
Hear that, Chad?
But you can buy those things. If you want to buy a Type R and you have the funds to do it, then do it. But no, you're going to have to cut back most likely on another spot. And if you're okay with cutting back, let's just say you don't have Netflix anymore. If you're okay with not having Netflix to have that other thing, then go for it. Right. But you have to prioritize what you want and what's important. And I don't think we do that as a society anymore. I think it's all or nothing for most part.
Right. Sounds like some Type R and chill.
Exactly.
I think it's the time preference and having the thing, having the things. Like, you can't have it all.
Yep.
And maybe I was looking up, my mom always used to tell me, life's not fair. The sooner you realize it, the better off you'll be. It's nice to have nice things, but you can't have all the nice things, because there's always somebody that has more money, that has more nice things, a bigger yacht, this, that, whatever.
Yep.
And maybe, so you keep telling me it's all about behavioral things. It really is just understanding that where your limitations are and and being smart with them.
Now, with that being said, though, you also have to tie in, you're mentioning income. You don't need a lot of income to have a good life. I mean, that's just point blank. You don't have to have a lot of money. But if your income is not keeping up with the cost of living, that's where things can start to get a little bit heavy, and you have to start cutting back a little bit more. If you're making, let's just say, $36,000 a year 5 years ago, and that same 30, and you haven't gotten a raise, and you're still making $36,000, groceries have gone up, gas prices have gone up. Are you still going to be able to afford groceries and gas based on your $36,000 that you had? And yes, you can, but you still might have to cut back on other things that you never thought you had to cut back on. And I think a lot of people are struggling with that, especially ones that don't get raises, or they do. It's still not enough to keep up with the cost of living. So I think it is behavioral,
Right.
but some of it can be a little just overall cost of living and just not being able to afford regular things that you could before because your income's not keeping up with inflation and just the overall cost of living. I'm
Right.
being summoned, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, you can pause real quick. So, a little bit of a break. So you were talking about inflation, cost of living, and people just being in bad conditions in general. You make 36, I think was the number you used, $36,000 a year. If you are stuck at that wage for 10 years, that $36,000 is not going to be worth $36,000.
Yep.
Particularly in the recent years, but. We've discussed that where some people are just born into bad situations, and some people are born into bad situations that they can work, themselves out of, and some are a little harder than others. That's obviously, things that happen, and some people are born into really good situations where they don't work a damn day in their life, and they're millionaires. It is what it is.
And they
That's
don't know
life.
what that struggle looks like.
Right. Right. And honestly, I don't know. I think I would rather be born on the lower end of the scale than the top, because some of those top people have some weird things in their brain that just, I don't know if you can help those people.
No, so with that said, I think that goes back to something that you were talking about in the beginning, like that paradigm of a financial education. So like you could go broke, but if you have a financial education, guess what? You're probably going to be able to make it back and you're going to be successful. But if you were just gifted this, and you never had that financial education, you never had some sort of struggle or had to understand what a budget was, you might never get back there.
Right.
So I guess that, I don't know if, I have a question. I don't want to step on where you're going with this.
Go for it.
But no, I just, from what you were saying about the education system, that's something that I've said in, plenty of older shows, that financial education is absolutely huge. And so I guess, like, how much of that financial education do you think, like, through the school system versus the parents, like, now I'm not saying to give me percentages or anything, but obviously both those are huge.
Absolutely.
And if the parents can't provide it, hopefully the school can. And I think it would make a massive difference. Like, personally, I remember going to college and it was like, oh, just sign here, you'll get some loans. And I'm like, okay, like, that's all I have to do. And then you're like, wait a second.
Yep.
Like, it's almost impossible to file bankruptcy and get out of these student loans. I mean, it does happen. It's rare. I'm going to be paying on these things for a long time. You've got people that, they're in the retirement age and they're still paying on student loans. So I guess, how much of that, education, like, do you think would affect the way that people understand finances or that financial education? And then also, versus kind of parents, if you will.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of split down the middle. I think if we started at a young age teaching kids the basics of budgeting a checkbook. Now, I am guilty. I don't budget my checkbook, but I know what comes in and what comes out.
Yeah.
So even if you're not doing it on a paper.
Did they teach you that in school?
I did. I actually, so it was my senior year as my home ec. We had to learn how to budget, do a budget, and we had to budget our checkbook.
I did too. Did you guys, do you have to budget a checkbook?
So right. I remember we had a class when I was like in 8th grade that was like, I think it was called Junior Achievement or something like that. And they talked about stock market stuff, and it was way too complicated. I just, within the last like 2 years, understood what the stock market is. My senior year was a little different than probably most people's. I really didn't show up in school.
That's
so they probably tried to teach me.
Yeah, and our junior year at Smithville, they did, but you were the career center, so they focused a lot on
Skilled trade.
specific
Yeah, good
skills.
trade.
Yeah.
So you may not have had that opportunity because they were, you
'Cause
know,
Because you wouldn't have student loans, and then you just got on into a
I-
trade.
yeah,
and
I
you
was
actually
too-
made
I was
decent
too
money.
busy-
You made a decent money doing
Yeah,
trades.
no
Yeah.
shit.
yeah.
I was too busy working and trying not to go to school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 50-50 though, budgeting the checkbook.
I would say, and I think, Fred, to your point, I think there's a fine line for what you teach in school and what the parents can teach. Because you're right. If you start throwing out stocks in the stock market, it can be over some people's head. I mean, there's still people that I meet and they're in their 50s and like, I have no idea how the stock market works. It's
not-
very complicated. But if you keep it simple and just start with, hey, this is your income coming in. This is your income. This is your expenses going out. This is your bottom line. This is what the means you have to stay in. But the fact that schools aren't teaching this anymore. So my niece, ironically, is 9 years younger than me. Big age difference between me and my older sister. But she didn't have an home ec class. So she'd never learned how to budget a checkbook. And I mean, we're 9 years apart. So 9 years difference. And I don't think they're teaching kids that now. I mean, they don't even have to do penmanship now in most schools.
Right.
So I think, sadly, it has to rely on the parents on showing you. And it could simply be you going to the grocery store with your child and saying, okay, so a bag of avocados is $5. So we need to write that down, $5. Okay, we're buying some chicken breasts. That's $15. And just showing them how you figure out how much it's going to cost before you get to the register. And now when you get to the register, it's, okay, now we've spent $300 on groceries. This is what our income is, so we're okay. And I think just insinuating that and showing them this is how simple it can be can help the kids for the long term make better financial choices, and then letting them know how loans work. I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing is
yeah.
people are like, oh, how much can I get? Yeah, sign me up. Yeah, let's do this.
So real quick on that.
Fixed variable APR. What's that?
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, because that goes even deeper. But I think there's a disconnect. And as you're saying this, I think about when getting to the point where I finally feel like I'm old, because I remember back in my day.
You old bastard.
Yeah,
Fred.
like it was
ODB.
we used to think like we would write like checks at the grocery store, and it was cash. And then when cards started coming, like credit cards and debit cards, like, well, I don't want to use this card. Like, but now most people pull out this card, even if it's a debit card, because I've seen advertisements for kids' debit cards.
Mhm.
Like you pull out this card.
Kids debit card?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's
yeah.
a kids debit card?
It's kind of like linked to your kids' savings account,
Yeah, so your kid can basically have a card and use a card.
and the kid can
But
use
it's
it.
it's not like a credit card, it's just a
Your
debit.
name's tied to
So,
it,
like,
but
hey,
they can use
I can't
it.
buy my American Spirits with my own money because I don't have it, so I'll tap into my kid's account.
That's not a bad idea.
You could do that.
Yeah. But I wonder, like, I guess this is part of that like conspiracy theorist in me, like how much of that was like engineered and how much of it just kind of happened to turn out that way, because it is convenient to use a debit, like even if you're using a debit card, it comes right out of the account, but there's something different that you don't see, that exchange of money where you realize when you walk up, because I do it just as much as anybody else. I'm getting gas or I'm getting groceries.
Mhm.
It's, well, these are the things I need. I got to pay for them. So I don't even look at the price.
Put it
I
on
just-
the tab.
Yep.
Yeah, I just throw the card in and there it is. So like but that disconnect of going from cash to just swiping the card, where you have to actually pull out the money out of your wallet and go, oh, 20, 40, 60. Oh man, like you see the money like leaving you.
Yep.
And I don't like, there's such a disconnect there. And then when you have a debit card and a credit card looks the same,
Mhm.
but the impact of those two things and the ramifications of those two things is entirely different.
Absolutely.
Like loans. Do you think it really just all comes back to people just not seeing all the underlying issues underneath those things and just
Out of sight, out of mind. It goes back to what I just, if you put more money into your 401k, you're not even going to see that money. You don't even see it coming out. It's just already out by the time you get your paycheck. And I think that is a downfall, is we've got this nice little plastic thing that we can just swipe and swipe and swipe. And then we get a statement at the end of the month. We're like, oh, how much did I spend? Oh, what? Because you don't know. Most people don't know what they spend until they get their monthly statement at the end of the.
well, some people I don't even think go that far, because it's
They don't.
all they do, they'd set up reoccurring monthly payments for the minimum amount, whatever it is.
Mhm.
and they don't never even look at the balance at all.
Right. And then when you use your debit card, it's the same thing, until you get I have a low balance alert. What?
Oh, I'm negative $45.
Right. But
Shucks.
and I think technology is great, don't get me wrong, but I think you're right. I think you don't have that physical write-in check anymore, or you don't have, a lot of people don't pay for cash anymore. So you don't see that exchange of, okay, how much am I spending? And I think the mind has shifted too of $200 to most people. Okay, $200 is $200. It's not that much money. But when we were all growing up, I think it's fair to say $200 was a lot of money. Like you didn't spend $200 on a pair of shoes, and people do it every day like it's no big deal. So I think the value of money for most people has depreciated, literally and figuratively. That $200, okay, no big deal, because they don't see how much $200 is, or compare what $200 can spend compared to what they are spending it on.
It's a double whammy where you're the inflation and the thought out, value of that $200 has changed. Where obviously $200 today would buy you a lot more than what $200 would, if you were to travel through time, go back in time and take $200.
Correct.
You could get a lot more sustenance from that. But also, like you said, I never really thought about that. The point of like shoes, even with inflation, like different items. Well, it's like I think the perfect example is what's that Supreme brand? No. It's just all it is. Like it's this red box and in white it says Supreme, and like people put on like sweatshirts and stuff. But it's like it's kind of like Gucci or anything else where it's
just a brand
exorbitantly priced, where it's like $500 for a hoodie that just says Supreme on it, but they only make a limited amount, which supply and demand. Okay, I get that, but like that shirt probably cost them what? I don't know, $5
to make. Yeah.
To make, and they're selling it for $500. But people, but that's Supreme, that's Gucci, that's this, that's whatever it is. Like
you're buying that brand.
Yeah, you're buying that. So like, not only is the money inflated through time, or the lack of rewind, the value that your money holds has gone down, it's depreciated, but also the value of things that people are selling has some kind of weird cultural appreciation that it just doesn't make sense.
Yep.
I have two things. And I think this is coming from somebody who has had a scarcity mindset for money for a very long time. So maybe other people will have this. Two things. So one is, you hear you don't like to avoid being in debt, whatever. So I don't even have a credit card. So that's like a thing that in my mind, that was like, okay, I can't get in unnecessary debt if I don't have a credit card. However, as I get older, I'm realizing that there are ways that you can actually make money with a credit card for like gas returns or, things like that.
The cashback feature.
Yeah, right? Or people that work and have to like
Travel,
hotels, travel, things like that. I have no idea about any of that because in my mind, credit card is bad, right? Like we have one for emergencies. It's not mine, it's his. I don't have it. I have like a Kohl's credit card. Because you get 40%, 30% off sometimes.
Which is pretty good.
Which is pretty damn good, right?
But that shit was marked up 40% from the beginning.
That's
so.
right. So you gotta
They're
like,
still making 10%.
Yeah.
But you gotta balance that out. So that is one thing. Like, is there really ways to be able to make money, like smart decisions? Because, we talk about debt and how that's no good and blah, blah, blah. But then there are ways to, invest either in yourself. You have to have credit for that, or, be able to take on debt to better yourself so you can be better in the future.
So you brought up a good point because, before you buy a house, what do people look at? They look at your credit score. How do you get a credit score?
In America or in China?
In America. Not in China.
Oh, okay. Just clarifying.
You borrow money and you pay it back.
You got it. So usually you have to have a credit card to show that you're worthy and you're paying off.
Source
Right.
of credit, yeah.
Car loan or
right. So you
house
have,
loan.
and so that's the crazy part with America is in order to have a decent credit score, you have to have some type of debt in order to show that you are good faith and you're going to pay your payments.
Dude,
You're incentivized.
That was
to
me
loans
for the
out.
first 10 vehicles I owned. I paid everything in cash, and when I wanted to get something, like, oh, you don't have any credit. I'm like, yeah, because I'm responsible and I pay my shit off. And they're like,
Right, so you-
we can't loan anything to you. And I was like, that's a very
You don't have
weird
any debt.
system.
We can't give you
What
money.
you would think would be the opposite.
Yeah,
You would think,
yeah.
okay, yeah, I've paid everything off. I don't have any debt. You would think that would make your credit score go up. So to your point, Cassie, I think you can, but you have to be disciplined. You can have a credit card. And I will be honest, I just got my first credit card a year ago. And I never used a credit card. I always used my debit card, didn't have credit cards. But now I use everything with my credit card because I get certain cash back on my money. And I think I've made $500 by using my credit card. However, I pay it off every month.
Yeah.
And that's the people that get stuck on is they don't pay it off every month. So then you've got that incurring interest that you're paying. So I think if you got the discipline, credit cards aren't bad. And actually, I think I read something that the average you should have is 8 to increase your credit score, which that freaks me out.
Credit cards?
8 credit cards. That freaks me out. But
What about, and I've had this pretty extensive conversation with people at banks before. Like they say you want to keep about that 1/3 on there if you want to build credit.
Yep. So don't max
Yeah.
out your credit cards.
And yeah, don't max it out, but don't pay it off. They said, like,
Yep.
keep that 1/3 on there and keep making revolving payments while you're paying on interest, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
Which
that's
kind of
because
sucks.
because
It
they
does.
want to essentially what it all boils
Yeah,
down to
they want
is
to make money.
they're getting your interest, so you're paying them to borrow this little bit amount of money, but what you're doing is you're paying them for a credit score,
Yeah.
essentially.
Exactly.
That's
You're
what's
exactly
happening.
right.
So
It's
I don't have a credit card, but my credit score is like 730. It's fantastic.
Did you ever
So-
have a car payment?
Yeah, so I have
So-
car payments.
you're
I
on the
had
hou-
student
house.
loans.
And you have
The
a house payment?
house.
Yep.
Yeah, so you can have a good credit score
Well,
without having the credit card. You just have to have a
Yes.
certain amount of debt that you actually pay on time.
yeah,
correct.
but eventually that'll start waning, and
Because
that's
I
not
won't have debt.
necessarily. And when you're talking about like extremes, like people look at over 700 being it's a good credit score. That's not excellent. That's not crazy because
Is it 700 or is it like 720, 730?
It's like
That's
720
20.
is good, but anything above 800 is like, oh my gosh, you're
Yeah.
holier than thou.
Well, 850 is the top.
right, but
Yeah.
you have
Okay.
to be these top end, spenders to be able to do that. Those
I'm
people
okay
that-
being above average. 730 was
Well,
fine.
Yeah, well, also was it like 68% of there's a 72% of the nation is obese.
hmm
So just being above average always
It's not
isn't
always good.
necessarily great.
Depends on what category you're looking
yeah,
at.
but so yeah, right. I think there's the financial system. I guess to me it's so disparaging isn't the word I want. There's so many extremes to it, like the credit score, or inflation and being able to make money. And if you're at the bottom of the scale, it's hard to really work your way up.
Mhm.
But if you're smart and you're able to use those things, you can slowly work your way up. You might not be able to get to the upper echelon because that's a whole different ball game. But with the credit scores, the loans, and it really seems like it comes down to just knowing what's going on, knowing what you're doing, and having some self-control is the
Absolutely.
biggest thing.
Well, I think a lot of people too is, okay, yeah, I've got debt. It's okay. I'll eventually pay it off. But why give somebody free money? Because that's what you're doing when you're paying interest on these credit cards or loans from the bank. Now, don't get me wrong. Unless you have a lot of money to buy your first house, loans can be
True.
okay. But you have to ask yourself, why am I paying X amount of money to somebody just because they're giving me a loan? Now, unless you're the receiver of that interest, hey, yeah, go for it.
Right.
But I think that's the mindset for most people is like, well, I'll eventually pay it off. But they don't realize how long, especially with student loans, how long it does take if you're making the minimum payment
Yeah.
and the interest between those two amounts, what the bottom line is going to be that you actually pay out. And actually, I ran a calculation for somebody when they were going to pay more interest than their loan was even worth
Yeah,
by the
I
time
believe
the,
that.
the lights. And a lot of
That's
people
wild.
don't realize that because that's the problem is credit cards and banks and people that you get loans from, they're not obligated to explain these things to you. They just say, hey, yeah, this is what you're approved for. Hey, and that's what happened in 2008
Yeah.
with the mortgages.
Yep.
They were just handing out
Oh,
mortgages
yeah.
like hotcakes. So like, oh yeah, you can do 450,000. I remember when we bought our house, they gave us an amount. And I'm like, we can't afford
Yeah.
that. They say we can, but I know for a fact we can't.
Yeah.
But people they trust the banks because why
True.
would you not? You're banking with that person. You're trusting them keeping your money safe. why would you not trust them by telling you, hey, yeah, this is a loan you can get?
You mean
They've gotten better, but they still are putting out, and I don't think another 2008 is going to happen, knock on wood. But you have to ask, with the housing market the way it is now, where people are buying houses for more than what the house is valued at, what's that going to do with the mortgages? And are people still going to be able to sustain that?
You end up like China and
Right.
Evergrande.
Right.
Yeah.
All these properties, all this money.
Wait, I have another
yeah.
question. So you, Freddie, earlier you said something about figuring out what corners to cut, whatever, and maybe at the end of the month you have an extra, I think you said $4 for that week or whatever.
Right.
Maybe you have an extra $10, $15, $20 left over for the month. Okay, so maybe you already have a little bit going into your 401k. Is there something that you would recommend somebody do with that $15, $20 so that it can make them money?
Savings account.
Just
Now, savings account aren't making much right now, but the number one thing that so many people don't have is they do not have an emergency fund. And then that's how they get into the debt that they have. Because, if your washer and dryer goes out, or if you need major repair on your house and you don't have, we usually recommend 6 months of emergency cash to cover everything. And usually that's your income. So 6 months of your income to save up. Many people don't have that. And because they don't have that, that's when they're into, okay, well, I've got to take out a loan because I got to repair the house, or I've got to put this credit card debt on there, or medical bills. If you have a major medical issue and your health insurance doesn't cover it, where are you going to put that money? You don't have it, but you need this life-saving treatment. You're going to have to take out a loan or get debt. And I think a lot of people they don't have that savings. So if you do have $4, $10, $15, put it into an emergency cash, and you don't have to invest it per se, but have it somewhere on the sidelines. Make sure it grows a little bit, but with interest. But that way you've got something. That way when something does major happen, you've got something to fall back on. And then once you have that emergency fund, then you can explore other opportunities of investing or increasing your 401k or things like that. But that's the number one thing that I'm seeing is people don't have emergency cash anymore because they rely so heavily on credit cards.
Right.
That's 6 months. Is that just an average? I'm just asking because I didn't know if there was like some sort of an equation that you guys calculate on, or that you're like, hey, people typically live up to their means with this. I was just personally thinking, and I'm like, like I could work for a very minimal months and cover everything, but I probably live way below my means.
Well, and so that's
that's
the
why
thing.
I was asking if there's an equation or anything you guys use to calculate that.
Yeah, there's not a huge calculation that we use, but we do just average it of, hey,
Sure.
based on your income, most likely you need half of your income, so 6 months of your income,
Sure.
to cover most of your expenses. Because the goal is cover your expenses and still have some money left
Yeah,
over
so
in case something
Kind
other
of
helps out.
laws of averages of the majority percentage.
You got
of how
it. You got it.
people are.
Because before they were saying, well, you need 6 months of expenses.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great, expenses, but what if you have a medical emergency or
Yep.
if you have something else? Now you've depleted your 6 months of expenses, and now you can't pay your home mortgage, and now you're unfortunately facing foreclosure. So that's why they switched it to 6 months of your income.
Okay.
That way, you can pay your expenses, but then if you have another life or emergency, you can cover that too.
Yeah. Let me ask this real quick. And this is like, how do you ever get like philosophical at all with some of your clients in terms of like, so you think of money, and whenever I think of money, I think of time.
Mhm.
And it's always an investment of time which you can never get back. And you can probably make more money, especially if you have the financial education, but you can't gain that time back. And so for me, it's always like, well, I made this money, like, where's it going to go? But this was always an investment of time. It was never this expenditure of money. Do you ever have those conversations with any clients, or is that something personal that you and Chad think about? Or just because for me, that time is tied so tightly to that money, which I can't buy more time.
Right.
So
Yeah. So I've and Chad and I have talked about this several times, and I've talked to some clients about it because the question has always is how much do I need to save?
yeah,
Because I want to go do XYZ,
the camper,
traveling,
Type R camper.
Oh, that would be pretty cool if they had that. But anyways, or if a Type R could pull a camper, there we go.
You could probably make that
Small
happen.
camper.
A very, very small
Drop-
camper.
drop-
Well
pop-up.
balanced.
Drop a 4BT motor in that.
Well balanced camper.
There you go. But I've asked that question because I've had a lot of clients that I've talked to, and they're like, well, I think we need this amount of money.
Yeah.
And, we run the calculations. I'm like, you really don't. So
No.
why don't you take some? And I've said this. I'm like, and maybe the financial advisor world will be like, oh my gosh, you're what? But I'm telling them, hey, go have fun now, because you're right. You're not promised tomorrow.
Goes back to your question, guys.
Yeah, and save for your retirement so that way you can enjoy your life and not
No.
have to work, but at the same time do a balance where you're enjoying things now. Now, with that being said, don't dig yourself into debt. So don't go take out a loan to buy a camper because you want to go camping. Be responsible and understand what you're getting into.
Yeah.
But I think you're exactly right. Our time is so valuable, and I think a lot of people don't realize how short we have in this world.
Yeah.
Even if you lived to 90 years goes by like that.
Yeah.
I have a 3-year-old and I can't believe she's going to be 3. It happens so fast. So enjoy life while you can, but be responsible and know how you can have fun. You don't have to have a lot of money to have fun.
Yeah.
And you can at the same time save for the retirement without being so far into debt. Because there's also people I talk to where they're so far into debt because they're doing things that they love,
Yeah.
which there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to look and say, okay, I'm having a lot of fun now, but am I really wanting to pay this debt for the rest of my life? And some of them is for the rest of their life. They're not going to pay it off till they're 80 years old. So I think it's a balance of enjoying what you want to now. And obviously you have to spend some money to have some fun.
Yeah.
But just know, hey, you need something on the other side. That way, when you're done working, you're done. You want to have more fun. You want to have more time. You still can, but still you can enjoy it now.
I think that goes right back to what you said. I think 3 times balance.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. So
Well, I think balance for everybody is a little different too.
it is.
Absolutely.
Some
Some
it's a
people-
relative term.
Yeah, some people can't live with that thought of, oh man, I'm in debt right now, and but I can work towards retirement. And other people are, I have to be debt free. Like I'm
That's
okay with taking on that debt now, and then
probably why you need a financial advisor to help you understand what that balance is.
Right.
yeah, well, that's
And some people they want to do stuff now, but they can't. Whether it's because they don't have time to do it because kids are in sports and they're
Yeah.
working 8 to 5, or because they don't have the money to do it. So
Maybe you can help them with that. to
Exactly.
Find that balance, or pull that $4 back to invest in this, and then be able to do the things you want to do, or say, hey, hold off just for a little bit, and we'll get you there.
right.
so you think, what about this? So the kind of way I've kind of looked at it is kind of working backwards. And I don't know how much of this goes into play for what you do, or how you consider these things. Is you look at the end goal. Like, what's the end goal? Where do you want to be? If you're lucky enough to make it to 60 to 80, where do you want to be during that time?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that might be, as weird as it is, like the last goal should be one of the first goals, because you have that time difference to be able to make it up.
Yep.
And then, okay, where do I want to be in, from 40 to 60, or, 20 to 40, whatever it might be. Like, okay, we can have some fun now, but we can't have too much fun at 30, because if we have too much fun at 30, that means our goals for 50 and 60 are going to be pushed to the side.
Exactly.
Have you found any type of specific things that help people? Because I know for me, a savings account doesn't work because I see that money there.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's money there, I can find ways to spend it.
Yep.
But I have found, just me personally, if I invest in things that are mostly safe, or if I do certain things with that money that I could make it liquid for an easy, like, I could turn it back into cash if I needed to fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm much better at saving that way, because it's that one step out of my control. Like,
Yep.
a lot of people burn a hole through your pocket. Like, that's when I don't think they say that anymore because nobody uses cash. But when I was a kid, it was like, oh, that money's burning a hole in your pocket because you have it. It's there. It's like, oh man, but if I can take it, like, and that was a revelation that I had, that kind of going back to the inflation talk too, the ultra rich people, they don't buy these art and cars and all these houses because, well, some of them want 10 houses.
Most of them don't.
Yeah, but most of them don't. You can only spend time in a couple of them throughout the year. They're buying these properties because they realize having $1 million just sitting in a bank account is not doing them any good.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you want some money for emergencies, so it's good to have some money set aside that you can access immediately for emergencies. But at some point, like, having all that money sit in the bank you're actually losing worth,
Right,
because
especially
of
if-
inflation. and whatnot.
Exactly.
But have you seen anything as far as, like, trends in different people, and kind of like Tony talked about, the philosophical view or the behavioral view, that, where people can recognize, hey, this might not be the path for everybody to have this money in a certain spot and doing these certain things. How does that differ from kind of person to person, and what makes those people realize that, okay, this is the kind of the route that I need to like focus on because I'm this way, or because I want to travel, or because I'm not good keeping money in a bank account or under my mattress, whatever it is. Like,
It's like we all learn differently. So like, how can we all save differently?
yeah. Like,
Yeah.
what are some of those key factors that help people realize, okay, I'm not great at, choosing the cheaper Starbucks, but what I can do is I can make my own coffee. Or I'm not great at, maybe I need my Starbucks, but whatever it is, like, have you seen different like little bullet points in people's lives, that how they kind of see and react differently to like,
Yeah, so and that's one thing that I think is important to have that conversation, even just with your own spouse, is okay, what are our goals first and foremost? What do we want to see? And then two, okay, how are we going to get there and what works for us? For Chad, he's the very much, okay, I can't have cash that's burning a hole in my pocket. And I was that way as a kid. I was great with my debit card, but if I had cash, I was spending it like crazy. And I don't.
Chad's buying JDM parts.
Right.
but if you could resell them later,
Well, true.
if
So-
it's an asset that appreciates.
Exactly. So I think it's how you are. If you can't open up your savings account and see a bunch of cash in there, put it into something that is still relatively liquid, but you can't just swipe your debit card or move it over to your checking account so easily. So, and there are relatively safe investments. CDs, which certificate of deposits, they're very boring. They're not exciting, but you get your principal back and you get interest on them. Now, you're not getting a lot of interest right now, but that's something where you can touch it if and when you need to, but it's not readily available for you to spend.
Or maybe even like a different bank with a savings account that you don't have a card attached to it.
Exactly.
That might have worked better for me, because like you see it all, especially now you got the mobile, you can just transfer.
Yep.
I'd transfer some of that money over.
Versus if you have a savings account at a different bank, you can still technically transfer it to your other bank, but it makes it a
Takes
lot
more
harder.
work.
Yeah,
You can't just
and it's not instant.
click a
Usually,
couple buttons.
usually it's a day.
So you mentioned the spouse is like, so it's difficult because once he was like, listen, I can't have this money sitting in the savings. I'm going to move it. Okay. So we have our own private checking and then we have a mutual savings. So this was, I don't know, a couple years now that you've been doing that. Like, I got to put it over here because I can't. So then when I pull it up, I'm like, holy shit, we don't have any fucking money. So now I am like, scarcity mindset, like, put that toy back. No, we're not. But nope, we're going to. Well, I go to Aldi anyway.
Well played, Fred.
But yeah, and so I.
She's really good about that, regardless. So that's her way before.
It like freaks me out to where I'm like, all right, I need an account to make sure that we have all of the bills in this account so that I know that they are getting paid, because we don't have any money. And so I'll be like,
Or at least in your mind, you don't have any money.
yeah, we don't. And he's like, babe, how many times do I have to tell you we have access to this much money? And I'm like, I can't see it though. And he's like, but I can't see all this sitting in my savings because I'm going to spend it. And so it really has, like, we've had to have like
Discussed it.
those discussions, like, okay,
58% of divorces are over money.
I know, it's
Yeah.
crazy. Well, and that was the one piece
So
of
just
advice
make a lot of it. is
my
that what you're saying?
parents gave me. My mom was like, listen, have a joint savings if that's what you want, but you've got to have your own private money. Fred has to have his private money, even if you decide how much of each goes into your own. That way, if he wants to spend it on something that you think is dumb, you can't get mad about it.
Yep.
Same with and it's worked very, very
Yeah.
well.
And we're the same way. I remember getting flack from my in-laws of, you guys have your separate money. We're like, yeah, we didn't do anything joint together. And a lot of people feel like once they are married, you have to have everything joint. And for some people, it works out. It's fine. But again, 58% of divorces are over money. So that tells me that people are arguing, Fred, what did you spend? Well, I'm going to go spend that same money on this.
Mhm.
Or, well, you can't spend that. So there's so much argument or disagreement with how much and who's spending what, how much money. Well, you're spending my money, I'm spending your money. So for some people, having separate accounts is good, but then having that conversation with each other and saying, hey, how much do you have in your savings? Okay, I've got this much in my savings. Okay, how much do you have in your checking? Okay, I've got this one. Okay, let's split down the bills. And for us, we base it on percentage. So my percentage of income and his, and we split down the bills that way. That way it's still 50-50, but we know he's not paying more. He's going to pay his portion of the bills based on his income. I'm paying the portion of my bills based on my income. Some people it works out for that, some people it doesn't. But you have to have that conversation, because if they don't think, if you do, you're going to have those arguments. You're going to have those disagreements of who's spending what. Now, for us, we have, okay, how much are you spending? And I think our limit's 200. 200 and below, we really don't have to have a conversation too much. If it's over 200, all right, let's have a conversation. But I think if you're married and you have a spouse, you have to have that conversation and have that limit of, okay, well, how much are we comfortable talking about when we're spending? Especially if you have joint money, or if you don't have joint money, still have that conversation of, okay, well, I'm going to spend this. Is this okay? All of our bills are paid. Yep, we're all good. Okay, yeah, go ahead and spend it.
So does accurate NSX equal divorce?
It does not. It would be a lot of fun to have that.
It equals conversation.
It equals conversation.
Let me ask you this then. As a financial advisor, then I know everything's different for each person.
Mhm.
There's not, it's not boom, this is universal across the board. But do you recommend people having kind of those separate accounts? I know that works for you, obviously, but like in your personal opinion, do you ever give that advice, or do you just kind of give some generalities and you're like, here's the information, do what is best for you guys?
Usually I try to keep it informative.
Okay.
Because if I don't, I have learned that one spouse wants a joint and the other one doesn't.
Sure.
So then it has a conflict right there at my desk. I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
well,
you're not a counselor.
I'm not a counselor,
So-
no. But I do. I mean, and I've had that, especially people that are either getting married or they're newlywed. They will ask, hey, do you have any recommendations for that? And I say, I don't have a recommendation. Here's the pros and cons of doing this way versus this way.
Yeah.
And then just leaving it up to them. Because otherwise, yeah, I'm not a counselor. I'm not going down that path.
Well, it seems like it's, as everything in life that we always end up discussing, that no matter if it's money or anything else, it always comes down to behavioral type things. And I'm kind of disappointed by that. I'm not really disappointed. There's never any secrets, there's no like super, awesome secret to life, whatever. But it seems like it's a very much figure out what works for you and be honest with yourself and
figure it out.
Yeah, figure it out. If you have a spouse, you need to be able to have those conversations. But if you don't, like at the same time, you have to be able to have those conversations with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the biggest things that, like she was talking about, when I realized, like, okay, this is how my brain works. This is how I operate with financials. I have to set, barriers for myself in place of, because I know if it's not necessarily if it's there, I'm just going to waste it, but I will find something that is beneficial to spend it on, but I'll still spend it regardless if it's a waste or it's beneficial. Like I'll still spend it.
Yeah.
So you have to find, like, you have to know yourself and understand, like, all right, this is my weak point. So what are some workarounds to my weak point so I can save this money or do something beneficial with this money? And, being able to have those, honest conversations with people.
And that's very hard to do, because as a society, we're like, okay, we want this now. We want to feel good. We are very now people versus looking at the broad spectrum of things. And it's very hard to keep yourself accountable. That's where, a spouse or a friend or somebody could be good, financial advisor.
56% of marriages end in divorce over money.
58%.
58%.
2% shy there. How dare you?
To have somebody hold you accountable, but then don't be upset or don't blame them for when they say,
calling
hey,
you out.
for calling you out. And I think, and this can go down a rabbit hole, but in our society today, nobody holds anybody accountable anymore.
Ooh, yeah.
For finances, for life choices, for you name it. There's no consequences. And I think if you, especially from a financial standpoint, if you want to be better later on in life and enjoy the things now and enjoy things later, you have to have that accountability. Because if you don't, you're just going to spend money. You're going to live paycheck to paycheck. And then when it comes to retirement, you're going to go, well, woe is me. I don't have any money. And there's some people that no matter what they do, they cannot make ends meet.
True.
I mean, it's
Right.
just they fall on bad times. They've got medical issues where they can't get out of debt.
Yeah.
Things like that happen, and we have to support those people.
Right.
But for a lot of people, where it is just an accountability thing, you have to step up and you have to say, okay, here's my weaknesses. I can't be going to Starbucks every single week and spending $20 a week. Or if you're a smoker, I'm not saying you need to quit or not, but realizing how much cigarettes cost and what that potentially be in 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, I'll say you need to quit as a healthcare
As a
professional.
health-
Please, I will help you.
Yes.
Contact me, please.
Yes,
It's
contact
a lot
Tony.
of money.
He
Well,
will
that's
do that.
that's one you see. I used to work in an environment where I had 20 to 30 employees, and not all of them, but it was a thing where I don't have money. This that I need some overtime, boss. I ain't got no money. But then you'd see them just smoking a half a pack of cigarettes. They would pick up
Buying
their beer
pop.
after work and all this different
Pop,
stuff.
beer,
They would
yeah.
buy gas
Energy
station
drinks.
food, energy drinks, like all
Mhm.
this stuff. I'm like, well, you realize even if you cut that down by half, you'd have an extra $75 a week. And they're like, whatever. And they'd be like, all right, let's do the math real quick. And
Mhm.
be like this, and they're like,
Yeah.
oh wow.
There's 4 mortgage payments right there.
Yeah. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So I think it's the understanding that the whole sphere of what am I spending money on? Is it really necessary? And not only that, but it's, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but we didn't really go into it, but like interest rates, like on credit cards, you realize like a home loan, okay, you might be able to get, if you get a 4 or 6% interest on a home loan, like that's pretty decent. Like it's low. Like, yeah, you're going to pay a lot of money in the long run. But if you get a credit card, most people that are in massive debt with credit cards, they don't have low credit card interest rates because
22%.
yeah, you're
22%. Yep.
like 22%. Like if you buy coffees with that every day and you don't like, think about that. If you buy even if it's a $4 coffee every single day for 30 days, that's $120 a month, 20%. That's another $24 a
Yeah.
month.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's another,
And you're still just making the minimum payment.
right. So that's another
Yep.
6 coffees that you're paying for per month that you're not actually paying. Like that gets out of hand.
Well,
real
that goes
quick.
back to the education piece. Is people
does.
don't realize that.
or
They just
even seeing, hey, whatever, this interest rate.
right. Okay, it's an interest rate. Okay, well, I know. I'll just go ahead and pay it.
Yeah. Until you get the bill at the end of the month, you go, oh, I didn't remember I spent that
Or you get
much
the
on
late
it.
payment because you didn't pay your bill on time.
Another
And it's another
$30.
$30.
So what that all sounds like is an open and honest conversation, Fred.
Yep.
That's something you always quote, with you, your financial advisor, with your significant other if there is one, and look in the mirror and with yourself
Absolutely.
Being honest with your self-appraisal.
and self finances.
Yeah. And I guess like, people always say, money can't buy you happiness. And I'll tell you what, coming from somebody, like I've said plenty of times in the past, someone that didn't come from money or didn't have a whole lot of it when was growing up, I agree wholeheartedly that money cannot buy happiness.
Mhm.
But it can buy you a boat.
It can. It can do that. But
It can buy you a boat.
I said it the other day.
I got a
and
truck
Kai
to
was
pull it
like,
too,
and
so.
a truck to pull it. And I'm like, yes, and a truck to pull it. Yeah. But
Not real country.
but it can help. It can really help.
Sorry, Chris.
When you don't have to worry about paying the bills and is my electricity going to shut off? Do I have enough money to feed my family tonight?
Yep.
That can help.
Yep.
And all the money you waste on stupid crap
Yeah.
is actually contributing to your own demise and your own sadness.
Yep.
And it's just, man, having a little bit of control over life can help out a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah. Having money is not bad, even though they say money is the root of all evil. It
The
can
love.
be. Well, yes, it can be. But you're exactly right. I grew up with a single mom, and she raised myself, my brother, and my niece, and my nephew. And I saw her work her butt off. And we had everything we would ever want. We had a great Christmas. We had great birthdays. But at the same time, I saw her work so much to get what we wanted for what? Now I'm in my 30s. I'm like, she didn't have to work that hard. Why did she work that hard? I didn't need all that stuff. But, as a kid, you want to provide for your family, and you want your kids and your significant other to know, hey, we're not struggling. We're okay.
Right.
And I think that's the hard part with, once you get out of that and you make enough money, yes, it's not buying you happiness, but it's like you said, it's giving you stability. It's giving you you can go to sleep at night and not have to worry about, okay, where's my next paycheck's going to come from, and what am I going to feed my kids tonight?
Are they picking up the car tomorrow?
Time,
Right.
independence, and freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. And that way you're not having to worry, okay, am I going to pay my electric bill, or am I going to feed my kids tonight? Am I going to be able to eat tonight, or do I have to just feed my kids?
Right.
So there's a lot of power involved with money, but it doesn't buy you happiness, but it can definitely buy you comfort.
So what it sounds like is people should probably come and talk to you so they can find that comfort through that financial freedom.
Or talk to somebody.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I can't tell them how to get a hold of her.
Someone,
yeah.
She doesn't work in the financial industry.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. But you don't.
Yeah,
And
talk to
that's
somebody.
Yeah, you don't have to talk to a financial advisor, especially if financial advisors scare you. You and I have had this conversation where just the word financial advisor scares the bejesus out of you versus like a financial coach or something like that. But just talk to somebody. Talk to your parents. Talk to your spouse. Talk to your boyfriend, girlfriend. Talk to somebody.
I'll even do this one. Talk to everybody.
Absolutely.
Don't talk to just somebody, because you get some bad. You talk to one person that like seems rich and has a lot of money.
I don't know. You think everybody?
No, well, yeah,
And take a hermeneutic of suspicion?
yes. Talk to everybody
Yes.
and gather.
You could figure out what
all-
not to do from a lot of those
Yeah,
people.
gather
You know.
all that
Absolutely.
information. If you see that person that casting aside all of the real whatever negative aspects of this, but if you see somebody that's like, this is a poor MFer right here, talk to that person, see what they did with their money, because then you go, oh,
And then you'll learn.
don't do that. I
Exactly.
smoked it all away. Okay, I will not smoke all my money away, or you know what I mean, like whatever it is.
Or
Like,
even on the other spectrum, you see somebody that's got a lot of money, that got a really nice house, that got nice cars. Talk to them, because I bet you if you talk to them, they are up to debt to their eyeballs.
yeah, there was that commercial years ago where it was like the guy was like in the perfect house with the perfect yard, and he's like grilling, and he's like, I'm in debt up to my eyeballs.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, why you have this beautiful house, beautiful family, all these beautiful things, and you realize, the family's
That's
in,
not freedom.
yeah, it's you're over $500,000 in debt, and it's like there's no way
That you're never
gonna
paying
pay
off.
that out.
Yeah.
So, all that being said, where do you think the situation that we're in now is headed with I don't even know what the percentage is now, that the percentage of US dollars that's been printed in the last 2 years.
30 plus in the
I'd say
last year.
it's definitely 30
Mhm.
plus. So where do you think we're headed with everything that's going on? Just as a
It's so hard to figure that out, because who would have thought we'd have 5.3% inflation when last year was 1.9?
It's transitory though, right?
What do you mean? There's no inflation.
Sorry, little
There's no
inside joke,
inflation.
yeah.
There's no
It's
inflation.
because they've been saying it's transitory for the last 8 months, and I feel like that's starting to shift. where it's
Absolutely.
like,
Well,
"Oh,
gas
yeah."
prices,
There's trans something in America, but I don't know about Tory.
right?
You know what that's supposed
That's
to
her name.
mean.
Right. So it's hard, because we're at 5.3% inflation right now, but who's to say next year what's that going to look like? Because it's so fluid, and it's so, we're printing so much money.
Right.
And what's that going to do? They were just talking about the debt ceiling, having to raise that again because we're going to go into default.
Which that happens.
It-
like
it
I get
happens.
it. But
Yeah.
So
Still,
you're saying we should invest in something else like Bitcoin?
No, we'll get to that.
No.
We'll get to
And everything on the
I'm
show is
saying
not
that.
taking
I know
advice,
you
it's an informational purposes only.
yeah, because we are not financial
Solid
advisors.
disclaimer.
Self disclaimer. It's honestly, it's hard to tell, because 10 years ago, who would have thought we'd be printing so much money?
Yeah.
And for what? For a stimulus check that most of us don't need? Personal
Well,
opinion?
There's a-
don't
there's a
need,
lot of
don't
things
get,
in there.
like, yeah.
And some of it don't get. I mean, it was like with the unemployment last year. My brother's self-employed, and he didn't see a dime until closer to the end of the year.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it went away, and he's like, I'm a small business owner. How can I thrive?
Yep.
Because I can't work. I'm not considered an essential worker. And he hardly got none of that when these bigger corporations, because they weren't
Yeah,
essential, got
PPP, yeah.
yeah, they
Oh, yeah.
got it. So with that being said, with the value of the dollar, it goes back to, years ago, trade and barter. Years ago, when you didn't have money, what did you do? Okay, well, you've got cows, I've got chickens. Well, if I have some milk, can I give you a chicken, or can I give you eggs? Way back in the day. And it was all about barter and trade. And I don't think we're going to get back to that anytime soon.
I don't know. We may be doing it with ammunition.
Ammunition's pretty good. The price is pretty.
We'll
the
have
price is
chickens.
Yeah,
yes,
hopefully.
yes,
That's the plan.
that's the plan.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I don't think, going back to chickens, you should put all your eggs in one basket.
Ooh,
You know,
well said.
even if the value of the dollar decreases, the euro has decreased. So the value in money, the way we're spending overall as a whole in the US and across, on an international standpoint, the value of money itself is going to go down.
Right.
Because it's just paper.
That's
Or-
inevitable.
It's just a coin. So even if it's the U.S. or not, if you boil it down, it's just something that is a value of, hey, I'm going to buy that. Here's this for it. And years ago, it was, okay, well, here's a cow, so I can buy your chicken.
Right.
So it's a shift of what that value is, and it depends on what that value that we put on it. That's what it's going to be worth.
Or 5 cows for your daughter's hand in marriage. But
Right.
That still happens too.
It still does. But it goes back to the stock market. The whole reason the stock market works the way it is investors are investing into a company because they believe in that company. And the more people that invest in that company makes the price go up.
Right.
If they don't think that company is doing well or have concerns, the price goes down. That's the whole premise of any stock market. The 3 that we have in the United States, international, that's just how overall investing works. Is
Right.
You're putting money into a company that you think is correct and is doing well, and they're going to continue to do well. If you hear something that's not going to do well, you're going to pull out and put your money elsewhere.
So it's a speculation of what can bypass inflation.
Absolutely.
essentially.
You're right. You're right. And that's the thing that we tell people is you have to diversify with different companies and where your money is. Don't put your whole money into the stock market, because if
No.
that stock market goes down, what's going to happen? Your whole value is going to go down. So
is that Bitcoin again? Is that what you're saying? I'm just playing.
So you're saying not to put all your money into Bitcoin either.
either you
no,
got
I
it.
would.
She's
No, I would
like,
agree
probably
with
not
that.
even a lot in the Bitcoin because
You
the
got it.
volatility, but
But that's the thing. You said put your money in under the mattress. Put some money under the mattress if you want to. If you think that's a good place for some of your money, go for it.
Don't put it all there.
Don't put it all there, because you have
until
because
inflation catches up.
you have
Yeah.
to keep up with inflation, and that's so hard for people to realize, because they're like, well, I'm not going to invest anything. I want the physical money, which is fine, but you're not going to keep up with inflation. So here in 10 years, when your $4 gallon of milk is now $8, you're not going to be able to buy that gallon of milk because you kept all your money over here, and it hasn't done, the value
Right.
hasn't done anything.
Oh, that's the game too, because you can't just buy a bunch of milk.
Probably should
You
buy
know-
cows, I guess.
Yeah, you
Buy cows,
but
yeah.
a cow doesn't last forever either. It's that
Right.
Like I think I've used to hear that diversification of your portfolio. And I'm like, I don't know what the hell that means. But like they're complex. They're maybe not complex words. They're big words. But diversifying. I remember when I started getting into Bitcoin, and maybe we can have that conversation now. It's
You
been
really
mentioned
want to have
enough.
that conversation.
Well, no. I want to hear your perspective of it. But people are like, well, that's crazy. But at the same time, it was like, all right, well, if you really look at diversification across the board, okay, I'm put some money in my 401k, right? Because it's that gets automatically invested in mutual funds and whatever. But also, like, I want to take some money and I want to maybe put it in some ETFs, that are a little more stock markety ish for. Using simple terms. But then also there's might be some companies I want to put some in the stock market. And then I also want to have some money in my safe. And I also want to have some money,
Rental
cash.
properties.
Yeah. I want to have, maybe even just a bare chunk of property somewhere. Like, but you know what? I might want a box of ammunition. And I also might want some food. And I also might, want a way to get clean water just in case I don't have power for a couple weeks.
Mhm.
All these things are the idea of looking at all the scenarios possible and trying to find all those scenarios, as weird as they may be, and diversifying your risks and investments to go, okay, do I think we're going to have nuclear fallout tomorrow? Probably not. So I don't need to build a bunker right now.
Right.
But you know what? I have to buy some groceries tomorrow. So I'm going to make sure I have enough cash to go get the milk and the eggs. And it's being able to look at all the different aspects and knowing who you are, because we've talked about, that self, appraisal
Mhm.
and
If you have to have your
behaviors.
$20 of Starbucks every single week, make sure you have some place that you've got your $20 worth of Starbucks. If you can, in fact, afford that,
Yeah.
making sure it's somewhere that you can access it or something. But because a lot of people think when I say diversification, it's okay, it's a company over here, some bonds over here, CDs over here. It's not necessarily just investments, because you can put your money into things that are going to make your money grow. Savings account, property, ammunition, guns, things that you can sell for a profit. Your house.
Yeah.
And so it used to be gold, silver, precious
exactly.
metals, whatever it might be.
Things that can appraise that you can eventually sell. So it doesn't have to be actual investments. Because I talk to a lot of people that are really nervous about investing, just the overall stock market, because the volatility that potentially could be there. It's okay, yeah, let's put some there. But if you're great with rental properties and you like that income and you can flip houses or whatever you want to do, put some money into that. The housing market is huge now. I wouldn't necessarily buy a house right now because of the...
But if you have some properties that you want to buy something else, you could sell some properties.
Exactly.
Well, I think investments is, a lot of people, like you said, think investments as, well, I'm putting money in the stock market or my 401k. Well, investing is just
anything in the long term that's going to pay some sort of dividends.
You got it.
The definition
you
of
could even
putting
say
your money
yourself,
somewhere.
like your education per se. Like, oh, you're going to get this career as this, and this is going to increase your income twofold. Well, probably going to pay off as long as it makes sense.
Yeah,
you don't have to invest too much.
Or maybe it's not going to increase your income, but it's going to increase your capability to continue to earn that income over somebody else that doesn't continue to.
Exactly.
Whatever it is, they're investing in things is not just the stock market or whatever you think it is. It's
you got it.
All of the things that you're putting money, effort to provide a better outcome.
I feel like there's a burning question over here. At what point does the cow become the Bitcoin? Because at one point, someone was trading seashells, and someone said, "I got this cow," and they're like, "What do I need a cow for? I got these seashells." And now we're like, "Well, we got this Bitcoin." You're like, "Well, I got this."
What do I need a US dollar for?
Money, like what? So I guess do you want to?
Like I said, I know we talked a little bit before.
Yes.
That you don't necessarily haven't done a bunch of research about Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies or whatever, but I do find it somewhat,
it's very intriguing though.
So I'll just do this since we're kind of having the money. I'll give another kind of brief breakdown with some interesting things to think about. So, do you know when Bitcoin was started?
I don't.
2007, 2008.
Interesting time.
Interesting time that we just referenced.
Who allegedly started it?
Yeah. So that just happened to be right as the financial crisis was coming, like 2/3 of the way through the end of, when everything started, like the investment banks started failing, or quote unquote too big to fail, rather. So it's interesting that, and this is kind of a side conspiracy theory, because I've talked about Bitcoin in a sense on
Bro,
a couple
you hit
different.
The pause button and bring Chad down for this.
No,
probably on there somewhere.
No, so I've talked about this, and I briefly went over it on the What Is Money show we did at, I can't remember when it was. It's What Is Money? Curiosity with a course. But it's kind of funny. You look at that, this person or people that we don't know who it is, Satoshi Nakamoto. Kind of invented this technology, this algorithm in a sense. It's like algorithms before there were algorithms. In 2007, started coming in 2008, 2009 is when it kind of really started actually being produced and utilized. That it's a time frame. It's kind of funny there. Some people could say it'd be aliens. I don't know, but
you had to throw that in there.
Yeah, I had to. But so nobody knows who this person is.
Yeah,
they don't know if it's a collective, but this person wrote a white paper and created this, computational mathematical internet thing.
Yes,
that everyone's like, oh, that's whatever. So the interesting thing around that is my personal love for Bitcoin is it completely takes away the entire system of around money. We've talked about the Fed, the Fed bank and printing money and, government and institutional investors that, at the high end are just manipulating money. That's what they do. Where this thing can't be manipulated by anybody. There's not one, you can't print more. It's, well, maybe let me back up a little bit. So we don't know who this person is that creates this Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin? I don't know. It's this weird internet, thing. But what it is for people out there that don't have any idea, I like to equate it to the thought of gold, because gold is like a physical thing, and it's a real thing. It's not like a dollar where you can just print more. Gold, you actually have to go and like dig it up.
Yep.
So before, the dollar was based, through time, it was based off of gold, because we knew like, hey, this gold is a precious metal. People like it. So we're going to hold a certain amount of gold, and then we'll print a certain amount of dollars to kind of equal those balances out. Well, then it was oil, whatever, but long story. But you have to dig this gold up. So if we think of the gold as Bitcoin, then you think, all right, well, there's these people and there's these machines that go and mine for this gold. So that's why they call Bitcoin mining, like creating these new Bitcoin. That's kind of what they're doing. They're kind of digging up through the internet this Bitcoin. Right. So these machines are kind of like the computers, because computers are used to mine this Bitcoin. And what it is instead of digging through the ground in specific areas, they are solving advanced mathematical problems. And that's in how they get awarded. They mine and dig up this Bitcoin through the internet, through mathematical problems and computation. Sounds still confusing. But what happens is when they do that, and this is where it gets really interesting, that like once I started learning more and more about it, it's the person that created, or people or whatever it is that created this, it's very constricted, where there will only ever be 21 million of this thing, this Bitcoin. Now it can be broken down into I want to say the hundreds of thousands or millions. Should pull that. Can you pull it and see how much a Satoshi is? I want to say, is it millions? Millions or hundreds of thousands?
I thought it was millions.
I think it's millions. So, but either way, you can break these like you don't have to buy one Bitcoin, because like right now, like I think Bitcoin's it's still 60,000 plus.
Yep.
So if you wanted to buy one Bitcoin, you'd have to take $60,000 and buy. You can buy, fractions of a Bitcoin. So you could go and buy $1.
I think there's even some investment sites that if you buy a stock, they'll give you one free Bitcoin or a percentage of the Bitcoin.
I don't think they're giving you free Bitcoin.
They're not giving you one.
Point me in the direction right now.
Yeah.
They're giving you a percentage of a
Pull my
Bitcoin.
wallet out.
So this says at current prices, a single Satoshi is worth around 0.02 cents.
Oh, so it must be millions.
So $1 is worth 43
Satoshis. Okay, so so it can be divided up very, very, small. So, but you'll still only have a very finite supply.
The 21 million.
Yeah, 21 million, and it's estimated that the last Bitcoin will be mined in 2040. But the crazy thing is about this is, as the mining demand rises or falls, I'm going to use algorithm. It's not an algorithm. I don't know the right word for it. I'm not a Bitcoin nerd.
Not yet.
Yeah, I'm kind of I don't know. It's
as these coasters.
Yeah, as I have the coasters, but the technology, it's smarter than I am. We'll say that. But say like if tomorrow half of the Bitcoin miners around the world, because it's international except for China because they banned it, say if they all stopped, well, that algorithm, for lack of a better word, adjusts itself automatically to where people will still get the same amount of, or it'll still be mined at the same rate. So like there's some really fancy mathematical footwork that's been done in this to instill some type of automatic balance to it, which is pretty wild. And not one human being can change it. Not even thousands of human beings. Like you'd have to have, I'm not even going to go there because it's very unlikely that somebody can change it. So for me, the idea, and this is kind of the Bitcoin maximalist idea, is that you have this system that is unchangeable by essentially anybody. No government can change it. They can stop it technically by being tyrannical over their people,
aka yelling.
Right. Well, Jenny, we're not talking about her. But like China, like they're like,
Yeah.
no, banned it. Like, but that's an extremely, controlling government.
Absolutely.
Or capital gains.
Yeah, there's some things they could try to do to it to really hamper it, but you still couldn't stop it. Like it can't be adjusted, it can't be changed.
There could be some butt fuckery though.
Yeah.
That's a way to put
Yeah,
it.
but that's the government controlling the people.
Yeah.
Not controlling
Agreed.
the thing.
Agreed.
The Bitcoin.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
limiting, like for China, it's
Yeah.
just limiting them from being able to
Using
mine it. Yeah.
Right. And using
It's still
it.
going on.
Yeah, it's still there. It's kind of like gold. It's like, well,
Yeah. Oh yeah, they could do the same things to gold. if they
yeah,
wanted.
like
Yeah.
you're no longer allowed to mine for gold. Well, it doesn't change that gold's still there, but obviously you can dig up gold all day long, whatever. But so the interesting thing to this is, I'm getting phone call. That's weird. It's this weird, like it's almost like a living creature in a sense where it like self-regulates. No one can change it. No one has power over it, and yet it seems to be I don't think it's necessarily like it's going to turn into like fiat money, but it's been kind of related to as a digital gold
Mhm.
in a sense, as a replacement for like a store of wealth, because you can still like the transactions. This is one of the most interesting things about it is I could send you money. I could send you quote unquote Bitcoin if you're allowed to change it into whatever fiat currency you have anywhere I want, anytime I want, as much as I want. And it takes at most like a half an hour.
Mhm.
I don't have to go through a bank. I don't have to go through a government. I don't have to go through Western Union. I don't have to provide any sort of, here's my documentation. Here's who I like. There's none of that. It's
Mhm.
just, here you go. Here's your money. Here's your Bitcoin, whatever it is. Like, and it's that to me, just particularly recently in the last few years, just seems so nice that I can't have any government just taking whatever money, the money I have stuffed under my mattress, and just going, oh, we just printed off 30% more of it.
And then the value has gone down.
Like
on that.
what? What do you mean? Like now I have to try to invest it into something. I have to put it in the stock market. I have to buy real estate. I have to buy, famous paintings just so I can like hold on to something that has value.
Bro, you buying some Hunter Biden paintings?
Yeah, maybe.
Wondering what that
Or
was.
some machine guns off me with Bitcoin?
Yeah, but you know what I mean. So like that's why it's such a special thing that, and I think and this is a whole different topic we won't get into, but Bitcoin is very, very different than any other cryptocurrencies.
So that was going to be my next question: is it because the way Bitcoin is mined and how it's ran,
Yep.
and how is that compared to other cryptocurrencies? Are other cryptocurrencies the same algorithm, or is it
No.
okay?
Not at all.
Because that's
No.
what I
Yeah, not at
thought too.
all.
Okay,
So there's
because I know the U.S. has mentioned about doing their own,
and that's
cryptocurrency.
scary.
Yes.
Yeah, we can get to that too.
I was gonna
But,
say,
yeah. So like, but it's so like the other cryptocurrencies, they all have a person behind them. Even the second famous one is Ethereum.
Yeah.
So they have Vitalik Buterin. Is it Buterin? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's Buterin.
the Russian dude.
Yeah. So before so this is just a little snippet. I don't know all the details. I won't get all the details. But when he started Ethereum, which is the second probably most popular cryptocurrency, I don't think Bitcoin's a cryptocurrency. I look at them as two different things.
Mhm.
Store wealth. Is that how you?
Yeah, well, I don't even know what it is. It's alien technology.
There you go.
yeah.
Thank you, Chad.
Yeah.
It's
But-
just machines underneath the earth that are doing it.
No, it's not that. But what it is there's somebody in charge of it. He can change whatever he wants at any point in time. When he started Ethereum out, he gave a bunch of it away to a
Mhm.
bunch of people as financial kickbacks to help him start the business up.
Mm.
Well, like if something can be changed and whenever you want, and they're talking about changing it soon to a different proof of stake instead of proof of work, we won't get into that. But if you can change something, how's it any different?
Mhm.
This is like, you can't put Bitcoin in the same category as all other cryptocurrencies because they're just not. I think a lot of them do have utility to them. I look at them as kind of like an in-between of like a futuristic stock market.
Mhm.
I think a lot of these companies have a lot of utility in, whether it be blockchain technologies or, maybe actually cryptocurrency technologies where we can exchange funds and, regulating and checking things in the blockchain. And there's a lot of different technology there that's evolving. I think there's value to those things.
Mhm.
but it's a lot different than some kind of, it's so hard to explain because there's nothing like it that has an absolute limited supply, an absolute limited, rate that it gets released, and an absolute freedom and decentralization to it. That's the biggest thing, is the decentralization. Is even other cryptocurrencies, it's not decentralized because somebody has control over it.
Right.
They can shut it down. You can't shut Bitcoin down. So that's where you can ban your people from using it, but you can't shut it down unless, we get a solar flare and the internet goes out and we lose
So
electricity.
here's your conspiracy theory then.
Back
So
to the poster.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So if nobody can stop it,
Mhm.
and there's a finite amount that that has to be mined, and you can only, what do you think what's the whole reason behind it?
I don't know. I think it was, I'm trying to remember what Satoshi said. Well, what, quote unquote, the person Satoshi said something about, it was the idea of starting it was an exchange of peer-to-peer resources without any type of middleman. And that's it doesn't do great because like you look at like places like Visa or MasterCard, they can, process like, I think it's like 300,000 transactions a second. Or Bitcoin can do like 30 a second. But that's a middle person that they're going through.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it takes days for all those things to work out. So like even in like your credit card, you spend the money, you don't actually spend the money. It takes a couple days for the business to get the money and all these different things to happen, where the Bitcoin, it's direct.
Yeah.
The money's there, the money's not, like, which makes it much harder to get your money back if something were to happen.
The risk involved.
The
with
risk
it.
involved, but the risk involved is a lot less if you know what you're doing because nobody can steal it.
Right.
Like it can't be hacked. Like your credit card. I've had a couple credit cards hacked, all those different things, but you get your money back because it's insured, like, whatever. But there's just so many.
But that takes time to get back too.
It does. It does take time to get back. But it's an interesting, I don't look at it. It's hard because we're so stuck, like you talked about, we're so stuck in our set of thinking of this is what money is. This is where I'm at. Like this week, this is how much money I have. You have to kind of separate everything you kind of know and look at it as a completely different aspect.
Yep.
And go, okay, what is this new thing?
And I think that's so hard for me, even from a personal level, to concept it because it's not something tangible that you have.
Right. But it's
worth
is that
something.
money on your plastic card that you have in your purse or your wallet?
That's true.
Tangible?
That is true.
It's just numbers in you check it on your phone as you go log into your your bank account on your phone.
That is true.
They're just numbers on a screen.
That is true.
If you have a lot of numbers on that screen, you go into the bank and say, I want all these numbers on my screen on this counter right now so I can take it with me.
And most likely they're not going to be able to give you all that because
they don't even have it.
Right. They're borrowing to other banks and et cetera, et cetera.
So is it really much different?
in that mindset,
You know what I mean?
it's really not because it is. And I guess that's the thing that a lot of people have hard grasping is, well, I can go to the bank and get money out and it's tangible. I can touch it.
Mhm.
It's like, well, yeah, you can. But like you said, if you pull everything out that you have, if you have a large number, that bank's not going to be able to give you all that money that same
Right.
day. Most likely, you're going to have to either go to another bank that you bank at. So if you bank at Chase, you have to go to the other bank down the Chase bank down the street to get more money, and
'Cause
then
they don't hold all that.
or they're going to have to borrow some more money from somebody else. And I think that's the hard part is because you can't technically see Bitcoin,
Mhm.
but know that there's value behind it and that you can use it for purchasing and trade and things like that. It is no different than going onto your bank screen and seeing those numbers because it's just at the end of the day, all numbers.
Well, it's all in what, like you said, it's all in what we make it.
Right.
It's whether it's a cow or a chicken or numbers in your, Chase bank account or Huntington bank account, whatever it is, or
Right.
it's Bitcoin or it's this, that, or if it's, ammunition or food or whatever it is, it's all what people are willing to exchange. And it's, I guess, do you see room for like cryptocurrencies and those type of things? I know you said you're not super into it, but those things being said, like, do you think there's a potential there for like that next step in technology and where do you think, just in general, maybe you still think Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are crap aside?
I never said that.
No, even if
It's
you do,
weird,
that's
but
okay.
yeah.
That's okay. That's totally okay if you do. But where do you think we're heading as far as like, when you look back, I mean, even 50, I know 50 years ago sounds like a long time, but at the same time, it's not.
Mhm.
Where do you think the economy and everything and the financial space is heading? Because it just seems, knowing more and more about the stock market and these really wealthy, uber wealthy people that are just manipulating money, and that's how they make money, is manipulating money. It just seems kind of really, I have a hard time, like, even though I understand it, I have a hard time like reconciling it in my head.
Oh yeah.
Now, like, where do you think we're headed?
And it's hard because 90% of the wealth is owned by the top 5%. It's like,
and they do it by manipulating wealth.
right.
So it's like, what is this?
Exactly. So and you said it earlier, the middle class is becoming more and more kind of separate. And eventually, I don't think the middle class is going to be the middle class. I think you're going to have the lower class, the almost lower class, and then you're going to have the wealthy earners. The way everything is going now, I think there's going to be a shift. I think there's going to be an opportunity for us middle class people to say, hey, we're getting the blunt end of the stick here. We're the hard workers. We're working the hardest that we can. Let's do something different. And whether that's with Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, I don't know. But I think there's going to be a shift, and there almost has to be a shift, because eventually, like I said, the middle class isn't going to be the middle class. There's going to be too much of a difference between the lower class and the upper class, because the upper class is going to just continue to get wealthier and wealthier and wealthier. And the poor class is going to just get poorer and poorer and
Sounds
poorer.
like communism.
Hopefully we don't go that way. That's a whole other topic to talk about.
That's kind of what it sounds like. There is no classes. It's wealthy or poor. And that's
Well,
it.
in the way inflation is, and I don't think we're going to keep the 5.3% inflation that we are right now. I think inflation is going to go back to a manageable place where it was. But then again, inflation itself is just going to continue to go up.
Always has.
It always has, and
Just
it
hopefully
always
not
will.
at
5 point, right? Because if
Whatever it
so, none of us are going to be retiring,
Right.
no matter how good you are with money. So things in life are continually just going to get more expensive. And the thing is too, that's kind of scary, but you shouldn't be fearful of it, is, right now you can go work fast food making $14 an hour. When I was a kid, I was lucky to get $5.
Right.
I'm like, $5 an hour, heck yeah, sign me up. And with that, now your cost of your hamburger is going to go up, because, and the thing is we're not going to go backwards. Inflation might come down, but you can't
You're
tell me
still
you can't
inflating.
right. You can't tell me a year from now, if you go to apply to Taco Bell, that you're going to get $10 an hour, and you're going to be okay with it, knowing that most of your coworkers are getting $15 an hour, because
Right.
that's how it is now. So that's the scary part, is because of that, everything else has to keep up with it. So your $5 hamburger is now going to be $10, because now you're paying your employees more. Well, you can't sustain a business if you're not increasing your goods and services, because you're paying your employees more.
Right.
So things are automatically just going to continue to go up. And back in the 70s, you bought a $70,000 house. It was a really, really nice house.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you might not have a wall in your house, and you might not have any plumbing in your house if you buy a $70,000 house. So things shift. Inflation is real. It's going to continue to go up. Things and prices are going to continue to go up. But I think as a society, we can kind of control how fast that happens. But a lot of it has to do with the government. And if they're continuing to spend money and print money, and the way
it's a whole different podcast.
that is.
Yeah.
But with that, and then with inflation too, it goes back to what's our value of the dollar going to be.
Right.
And honestly, I don't know. It's scary to think about, because what we spend now is going to be different in the future. Is our dollar going to be able to keep up with what's going to be spending in the future?
Right. So, two things. One, you listened to that episode. I don't think you listened to the final episode unless you re-listened to it once it came out.
Yes.
Do you think the dollar will completely fail at some point in the relative future? And I'm gonna say like within the next 100 years. And I think that's like a relative future when you really look at monetary systems.
Yeah.
If it lasts another 100 years, that's pretty good
So
as far as history goes.
It's funny because I've had this conversation before, and it's, are we going to go back to the old age where you were exchanging cows for chickens, or you were exchanging a good or a service for another good and service, where the value, where money or currency itself was not even there. It wasn't of any value. It's
Right.
a good or service. I don't think we're going to get back to that just based on the technology that we have, just society as a whole. But I don't see why we couldn't maybe halfway get there, because at some point, what's the value of money? Either the US dollar, the euro, you name it. It's just whatever we value and whatever price we put on that at that point. And you said that in your episode, is money is just what we put the value on. And whatever price that is, that's what we put it on there. So it's like, is that going to be able to keep up with what's going on as an economic society that we have? Is that going to keep up? Or we're going to have to go back to, hey, Fred, I need my roof fixed on my house. Could you come over and fix my roof, and then I'll come over and paint your house? Is it going to go back to that good and services versus, hey, Fred, come over and fix my house. I'm going to give you $1,000 to fix it.
Right.
And maybe someday you look at me and say, $1,000, that's not going to do anything for me.
Give me a cow. I like red meat.
Right, right. So I
I
hope we don't get back to that. But I've had that conversation, especially when the pandemic hit.
Yeah, I think it would take a catastrophe
It
in order
absolutely
for
would.
something. But who knows what the dollar turns into or what it's worth. And that was just a little fun question. But
yeah, it's fun to think about those things because you hope that it doesn't get that way.
But it's
at the
really
same
interesting.
It's interesting to think that way. And if you're going down the rabbit hole, prepare yourself in case that
diversification.
Diversification,
Right?
yes, exactly. In case you are there, I mean, won't be in our lifetime, but that way, hopefully. But if something does happen, maybe your great grandkids will be prepared for it, and they'll know, okay, I got to barter and trade for something I want or need. Hopefully, it doesn't get that way, but who knows?
I agree. So I think that's a good place to wrap it up. But if you have one or two or three or whatever piece of advice for the average person trying to get on financial track, or even not, just in general, whatever, what would your main things be like? Hey, these are the things you need to start out with. These are the things you need to focus on.
Number one, set up an emergency cash fund. 6 months of your income. If that seems outrageous, just start putting money away somewhere. If you can't see it on your statement, put it at another bank somewhere, but start with your emergency cash fund. Second is know what money is coming in, what money is coming out. And it's simple. Just when you get your paycheck, write down all the expenses that you pay on a daily basis. At the end of the month, tally it up. That's your surplus or that's your deficit. And now you know, oh, I'm not saving as much money as I thought I was. Or, hey, I've got $1,000 left over each month. Holy crap, what am I going to do with this?
Don't spend it.
Don't spend it. But put that in emergency cash fund.
Yeah.
But know what's coming in, what's coming out. And the third thing is diversify. And doesn't mean, spread your money on different investments as stocks, bonds, mutual funds, but, make sure you're putting money into a 401k for retirement. Put some money away for your emergency cash. Put some money, if you have money to buy property, when is a good time to buy property? Buy property. Buy things that you can potentially sell to make a profit. Now, don't go out and buy, a Type R and expect to spend it or sell it here in 5 years and make more money.
Hear that, Chad?
But think about that. Think about things that you can buy now that is relatively low in price that can you eventually spend or be able to sell later for a profit. Buy low, sell high.
Boom. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's perfect.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Cool.
Thank you for joining us today. Remember, check out the website, chronic-curiosity.com, to join us at the forum, have some fun, interaction, pick you up a comfy t-shirt, or if you just want to support the show and donate, all that is on the website as well. Thank you. Until next time. See you.